everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Natalia Leigh. I'm an indie author and full-time freelance editor, and today I am back with another video, one that you guys voted on in my Monday poll. And the video you guys chose for this week is how to prepare your manuscript for an editor. I've received a lot of questions about this, and I've also, over the years that I've been doing this, received so many different types of files, files with different types of formatting, maybe different types of problems that the author didn't know that they needed to correct. Sometimes I have to send files back to authors in order to correct those problems before they can resubmit. So I hope that this video will help you guys get prepared for sending your manuscript to an editor, whether that's a developmental editor, a line editor, or a copy editor. Do keep in mind though, when you're working with a professional editor, some editors have very specific requirements for what they want you to do to your document before sending it to them. The tips I'm going to give you today are, one, going to be like a general overview, something that's going to pretty much be 100% safe for any editor you might be sending your project to. And number two, it's going to be perfectly accurate for Enchanted Ink Publishing. So if you are going to be submitting to EIP for editorial services, whether it's a critique, copy edit, proofread, well, proofread would be different, so really just a critique or a copy edit, then you can definitely follow these tips and these guidelines to a T and you will be good to go. Now, speaking of tea, I actually have some right here. I just poured it for myself, and look, this is, my mom got me this cup for Christmas. We celebrated Christmas early. We celebrated last weekend. Since Greg and I live kind of far away, we thought it would be best to celebrate like a weekend early so that there wasn't as much traffic into Denver. And my mom got me this little mug and it has like Christmas dogs all over it. I absolutely love it. So my sister told me that she hates the way I sip tea in my videos, so if she's watching, maybe I'll do a loud sip just for her. Ah, it's too hot. Okay, well, let's get that out of the way. And let's talk about how you need to format your manuscript in order to submit it to a professional editor. Now, there's a lot to go over, so I wrote everything down here. I have an entire list. We're just going to work off of this because I have everything organized. So, first step is to self-edit. Now, this one is kind of a no-brainer, but I do think it's necessary to mention because let's say you're submitting for, I don't know, copy editing. This will be a good example. If you want a professional editor to copy edit your manuscript, you need to have gone over it yourself, preferably a few different times. You could even have sent it to beta readers before you send it to really a developmental editor or a copy editor. So you want to make sure that you are revising as much as you possibly can and you are getting that manuscript as clean as possible and as free of errors as possible before you submit to any editor. Not only will it help them do the best job they possibly can, but it could also help you in the long run as well. Some editors, some copy editors will offer different rates depending on how clean or messy your work is. So by putting in a lot of work up front to get that work as clean as possible, that's really going to help you down the road no matter which type of editor you are hiring. So make sure you are doing multiple rounds of self-edits before you are submitting for editorial work. Okay, tip number 2 is to have your manuscript in a Word doc format, and I am very aware that not everybody writes in Microsoft Word. You might write in Word, you might write in Scrivener, you might write in Google Docs, you might write in Pages like on a Mac. So I know that people write in a lot of different programs, but the majority of editors you will come across will edit books in Microsoft Word. So you want to make sure that you are providing them the right file type. Using me as an example, I edit on a Windows laptop. So anytime a client sends me, let's say, a manuscript in a Pages document, which is something that's made on a Mac, I cannot open it because I don't have the right I don't have the right program on my computer to open a Pages document. So I have to reach back out to them. I have to ask them to please export as a Word doc, which is .doc or .docx, and then they have to resubmit it to me because I can't even open it. So you want to make sure you're submitting your manuscript to your editor as a Word doc. Something else that is best not to do is submitting a Google Docs link to an editor. Now, it's not a big problem. I've had a lot of clients submit their work to me as a Google Doc link. However, this is one of those things that your editor is already going to be working incredibly hard for you. So by submitting a Google Doc link, you're telling them, you know, please go to my link, export the file that I wrote, and then you can get started. But it would be best if when you are done on your Google Docs, go to the, what is it? It's either export or download from the drop-down menu on Google Docs. And from there, you can choose to export or download your Google Docs file as a .docx, and then that is what you want to submit to your editor. Again, it's not a big problem if you provide them a link to your Google Doc, but in order to just be as professional and polite as you can, it's best that you export and download that as a Word doc file and then attach that to the email and send it to your editor that way, rather than asking them to jump through multiple more hoops just to get access to your files. Okay, tip number 3, following up on needing to submit a clean Word doc to your editor, I have quite a few tips here about how to make sure that Word doc that you're submitting to your editor is formatted in the cleanest, simplest way possible, and it's going to be in a format that's very easy for an editor to work with, whether developmental, line, copy editor, etc. So I'm gonna read through some of these because there's a lot here. Ty is gonna go be mean to Gypsy. Okay, anyway, I'm sitting in front of my window and I can see the horses out in the pasture, and Ty can be a little bit of a bully to Gypsy, and she's trying to take a nap right now, and I see him like creeping up on her. So sorry, but they sometimes distract me. So you want to use a simple font. I prefer Times New Roman 12 point, and something to keep in mind is that you want to use a serif font. Times New Roman is a serif font, and serif, there he goes again. The serifs they're like the little kind of like tails and marks that you will see on a font, whereas a sans serif, they don't have those nice little like marks and tails on them, and most editors prefer working with a serif font. A serif font is much easier on the eye, and it's also easier to detect errors when you're using a serif font. A sans serif, they're all so similar, the letters are, that it's not as easy on the eye to catch things that are wrong. So I recommend using a simple Times New Roman, which is a serif font, and it's best to put it in 12 point. I've had some clients submit in like 10 point font, and it's so small that I either have to zoom in to like 150% to work on it, or I have to resize the entire document, which will of course mess up any other like special sizing or font formatting that you had going on. So try to just prepare that ahead of time. Times New Roman 12 point font. You don't want justification. Justification is like if you select your entire Microsoft Word document and you justify it, what it's going to do is create those nice like straight lines on either margin. Now, when you do that, it causes lines to pull, and let's say your editor needs to bump up a page break, add a page break, anything like that. It can cause your words to get super stretched out across the entire page, and justification is something that does not need to be touched on until you get to the formatting phase. So this is much too early in the process to be adding justification to your document. So instead, just have it like left aligned and indented, and we're going to talk about indents next. So this is something that I have mentioned in previous videos, and this is something that's really important for everybody to be aware of because it's a problem that I come across very frequently when preparing my own clients' manuscripts for editing. So when I open a new manuscript document and I'm getting ready to start editing it, I have a long checklist of things I go through and that I have to clean up if the author hasn't already done it before I can even get started with editing. And manual tabs, or like using the space bar to try to indent the first line of a new paragraph, is one of the most consistent and biggest problems that I come across. So you do not want to be creating your own indentation with the space bar, and you do not want to be hitting the tab key on your keyboard and forcing those manual tabs. This is something that will really mess with you during the formatting phase, and it's something that either your editor is going to need to address or your formatter is going to need to address. And sometimes they won't even touch it. They will send it back to you so that you fix it before resubmitting. because if you have manual tabs everywhere, or if you try to indent the first line of new paragraphs with a random number of spaces, which I have seen, it makes your book honestly quite messy for an editor to try to work with, or a formatter to try to work with. So instead, you need to go through and remove all of those manual tabs, or if you spaced them out, you need to go to all of those, remove all the additional spacing, and then use Word's paragraph indentation function. It is very simple and easy to use. On mine, and I know that the way that my Word is laid out versus the way Word might be laid out like on a Mac is going to be a little bit different, but on mine, I simply go up to like the toolbar on top, I select the paragraph drop down, and then I set the default indent first line at like 0.25 or 0.3. That's what I prefer. I think the Word's default is 0.5, which is totally fine, but for like formatting down the line and for published books, a 0.5 first line indent is much too large. So that's why I prefer doing like a 0.25 or a 0.3. Just set that as the default, and then you never have to mess with it again. You never have to touch it, and you never have to hit that tab key to force a manual indent. It's gonna be a mess. Your editor is going to have to remove it. So do the kind thing and remove all of that manual indentation before you send it to your editor. Okay, next is line spacing. So what you don't want to do is send your editor a single spaced Word doc for editing. Those lines are just way too close together. They are way too scrunched, and it makes editing very difficult. So instead of having single line spacing, what I prefer most as an editor is to either work with 1.5 spacing or double spaced lines, and that just offers enough of white space that my eyes can track the pages and can track the words on the pages very, very easily. I don't get lost. You know, my eyes don't get confused about what line they should be shifting to, anything like that. So it can just really simplify and streamline the editorial process. So before you submit it to your editor, either set it at 1.5 or 2/ double line spacing, just to get it prepared so that they have plenty of room and plenty of white space to work with while they are editing your document. Now, going along with that, you don't want to add an additional line break. You know, you don't want to hit enter twice to create an additional paragraph break between paragraphs. This is something I have seen a lot as well. So you want your text to just flow naturally. And of course, when you bump down to a new paragraph, once you have that default indentation turned on, it will already go ahead and indent your first line, and then you can just keep writing. But there should not be any additional spacing before or after a paragraph, a chunk of text. So when you get to the end of a paragraph, don't hit the paragraph or the paragraph key. Don't hit the enter button twice, because that's going to drop you down one line, and then it's going to drop you down another line, and you're going to have two paragraph marks. Now, if you turn on the hidden characters or the paragraph marks in Word, you'll see what I'm talking about. And that's your paragraph. That's like where the paragraph breaks. So you don't want additional space between paragraphs. You want all of those to be all the space needs to be perfectly aligned. So no additional spacing before or after your paragraphs. All right, two more things within the formatting category. I know that there's a lot to cover here, but believe me, it'll make your document super clean and your editor will love you for it. And it's always good when your editor loves you for all the preparation you do beforehand. So the next thing you want to do is put in a page break at the end of a chapter. So some authors, instead of using a page break when they get to the end of a chapter, they will just hit the enter key until they get to their new page. And that's okay. It looks okay when you're just writing, but if anything shifts, all of your pages are going to shift. So a page break makes sure that no matter how much text is added or removed before that page break, that chapter will always break at the exact same place, and then that'll push you onto a new page, which is where your new chapter should start. So at the end of a chapter, when you're done, before you go to your next chapter. Again, on Word, you can go up to like the toolbar on the top and you can go to insert, and then you're going to insert a page break, and then it'll bump you down to the next page, and that is where you're going to start your new chapter. Now, the last thing that you want to do to prepare the formatting of your document for your editor is to remove any fancy styling or formatting. So this might be different font faces. So if you have a lot of different fonts, let's say that you didn't submit your manuscript as a Times New Roman. Let's say you submitted it as like Calibri or something, or like Arial, sans serif. Your editor is likely going to need to change that. So if you have like a body font that's Arial, and then you have text messages in like Baskerville or some other font, when your editor goes through and has to change it to Times New Roman or whatever their favorite like serif is, it's going to change everything. So you're going to lose that styling anyway. So it's best to just remove it for them. And then later on in formatting is when you will either do a different font face, or for text messages, something that we've been doing for our clients that we love is putting text messages in little text message bubbles, or maybe you have like a handwritten note. We like to put those on like parchment pages. So again, this is something that's going to be done later on in the formatting phase, but for your editor, keep it as clean and simple as possible. Something else you want to remove is going to be like drop caps. Remove your drop caps, keep that super simple. You don't want a bunch of different like paragraph styling. Word has a style panel where you can select text and then like assign different styles to it. But again, it's best to just keep it all clean, no styling, and then all of that styling and all the really nice, beautiful, fancy formatting will come in later. But you don't want your editor having to deal with that. And you also don't want to submit something to the editor and then they have to do a manuscript-wide change, and it's going to remove all that formatting anyway. So just prepare it for them ahead of time, remove all the fancy styling, all the fancy formatting, and then that can be put back in later when your book is ready for the formatting phase. Okay, the last thing, we're going to talk about ancillary documents. So these are like the extra documents that you can provide to your editor, and you don't always need to, and it depends on what type of edit you're getting from your editor. So let's say you're getting a developmental edit, or you're getting a manuscript critique at Enchanted Ink Publishing. Something that you might want to send along to your editor is like a letter to the editor. I get these often when I'm doing manuscript critiques, and I really love them. I'm working on a critique right now. I'm probably going to finish it up this week. It's the second novella I've worked on for this specific author, and he always submits like a letter to the editor, and I love it because I will read the novella first so that I gather all of my own thoughts and opinions, and I'm not being influenced by anything he's concerned about. But then once I'm done and I've, made notes to myself before I start my second read through, I will read that letter to the editor. I'll read over all the concerns that the author has. There are always questions for me to answer, and I love that because if an author has questions going into a critique or into a developmental edit, I want to make sure that I'm touching on those and answering them as fully as, as I possibly can. So I love receiving that letter to the editor with the additional questions and concerns, and then I can make sure to address those in my editorial letter before I return it to the author. So again, it's going to depend on who your editor is and if they want these extra documents. But if you're working with EIP, especially on a manuscript critique is where we really see this, it is perfectly fine, and even in my opinion, smiled upon to send a document with all of your questions and concerns so that your editor can keep a specific eye out for that, preferably when they're doing their second read through. I always do 2 read throughs when I am doing a critique because the first read through is like it's just a way to absorb all of the information, and you can never tell, really, an editor can't tell what your intentions and goals are for a project until they've read all the way through it. So make sure if you're getting a developmental, a critique, any type of like heavy content edit, ask your editor, how many read-throughs do you do? Because you want like a minimum of 2 read-throughs. The first read-through is just gathering all the information, understanding the intentions, making preliminary notes, and then the next read-through is where all the magic happens, because now your editor knows what you were trying to achieve and they can better guide you down the road of revisions to achieving that thing that you were setting out to do. So a letter to the editor with questions and concerns can be great for a critique or a developmental edit. Now for a copy edit, you could provide a style sheet, but most people are not going to have this. And it's not a problem if you don't have a style sheet going into a copy edit, because a professional copy editor will provide you a style sheet. This is so important, my friends. If your copy editor does not provide you a style sheet, how do I say this in a nice way? Then they probably aren't somebody that you want to work with again. Make sure that you ask them leading into the copy edit before you put any money down. Make sure they're going to provide this to you. A style sheet is kind of like a guidebook or dictionary for your specific project. It's 100% unique and tailored to your story and who you are as a writer. It's going to have things on there like spelling variations, spelling distinctions, you know, even like the word leap, like to leap over a fallen tree. Some people like to use leaped and some people like to use leapt as the simple past tense. So either of those are perfectly fine for simple past, but your copy editor needs to make sure that if you're using leapt, that you're using leapt all the way through. It's not he leapt over the log and then she leaped over the river. So a spelling distinction would be, okay, leaped or leapt, for example. And there are so many instances of that where if you're not trained to catch it, you will read leaped and then you will read leapt 50 pages later and you won't catch that there's anything wrong there, but a copy editor should be looking for consistency. So that spelling distinction will be put on your style sheet. It'll have a list of any like formatting changes that your editor made. You know, if they did silent changes, like making sure that all of your apostrophes and, you know, quotation marks are curly quotes instead of straight quotes, and they do a search and replace throughout the entire manuscript. That's going to be like a silent formatting change, or removing spacing before and after paragraph marks, stuff like that. That should be listed on your style sheet. It should have a list of all the characters, places, important terms, things to keep track of. It's really an important document for not only you as the author to have, but it's imperative that a proofreader have your style sheet, because they need to reference that style sheet while they're proofreading your document. And I said earlier, like, you don't have to provide a copy editor a style sheet, because a professional copy editor will provide one to you. But if you have very specific spellings, if you are, what's a good example? Some authors like to capitalize very specific terms, even if, you know, maybe to my editor brain, I'm saying, you know, that does not need capitalization. If the author comes to me beforehand and they provide me a style sheet and they say, you know, I'm aware this word doesn't need to be capitalized and probably technically shouldn't be capitalized, but I'm aware of it and I want it to be capitalized, and here it is on my style sheet that I'm providing to you, then I can more closely adhere to exactly what that author wants, instead of going through the entire document and removing what, you know, I might see as like superfluous capitalization, whereas they were like, oh, I really wanted that there, but they didn't provide me that style sheet, so I didn't know that going into the edit. So if you have very specific spelling preferences, capitalization, anything like that, it could be very, very helpful to write up a style sheet. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It doesn't have to be anything professional. Just like a list of terms, capitalization, spelling, anything like that. Just list it out in a very clean Word document, and you can provide that to your editor before they start your copy edit. So then they're going into the edit knowing what your preferences are. Another important one that I come across very often is UK versus US versus Canadian spelling. So sometimes I'll step into a book and I'll see that The majority of it is US spelling preferences, and then some of it is randomly UK. And in some instances, you know, Canadian spelling can have like a little bit of a mix of both, so that one can be a little bit tricky. Okay, sorry guys, my camera randomly died there, so we're back now. So we were talking about spelling. So if you have a spelling preference, and all of us are going to, I want all of my books to adhere to American spelling conventions. So I would need to know, if I were hiring a copy editor, that they were on the lookout for any like rogue UK, you know, spelling variants like gray and gray. Grey is more of a UK approach. Gray is an American spelling approach. So they're not misspelled, but your editor needs to know, do you want the UK? Do you want the US? What do you want here, so that I can make sure that it's consistent all the way out. So if you do decide to provide a style sheet, make sure to put on there what your spelling preferences are. And again, you don't have to do this. Not very many clients submit a style sheet to me, and usually you're not going to, you're not going to need to, as long as you tell your editor, you know, US, UK spelling conventions. But it could be helpful if you already know that you're using some non-traditional methods in your manuscript, that it could be good to let your editor know that beforehand, so that they're not going through and like undoing all the hard work that you did, and then you'll have to go through and reject all those changes or do a search and replace, or however you want to correct that. So letter to the editor with questions and concerns, maybe if you are getting a manuscript critique or developmental edit. And then for a copy edit, you could provide a style sheet if you want to, and for a proofread, absolutely 100% you need to provide a style sheet. That should be provided to you by your copy editor. And something else that we should touch upon, now this is kind of just a little add-on, and we can talk about this more in a different video, but for a proofread, if you're submitting to a professional editor for a proofread, make sure you are submitting to them either in a formatted PDF or a physical copy. Some editors prefer a physical copy, some editors prefer a PDF. I used to request both from my clients. I would actually proofread on the PDF, but then I wanted a physical copy so that I could see it in front of me and point out anything that I noticed upon opening that book and looking through it. So you shouldn't be providing a Word document to your proofreader. That's something that you're going to provide to your copy editor, and then after the formatting is all done and it's been exported as a PDF for print, that is what you're going to give to your proofreader, because you want your proofreader to look, you know, be on the lookout for any incorrect formatting, inconsistent formatting. Maybe there's one chapter that's missing headers and page numbers, and they're not going to be able to catch that stuff if it hasn't already been formatted. So make sure you're formatting and exporting as a PDF before you give that to your proofreader. Okay, my friends, that is all. I thought this was going to be a super quick video, but I actually had a lot more to go over than I thought I was going to. If there are any other specific questions you have about what you should or shouldn't be doing to your manuscript prior to submitting it to your editor, please let me know in the comments down below. Again, if you are working with Enchanted Ink Publishing, this video is going to be a perfect guide, because these are our preferred specifications, I guess you could say. This is exactly what we like to see from authors when they provide their manuscripts to us, whether for a critique, a copy edit, or a proofread. But again, I'm sure there are things that I might have missed. There might be things that maybe your editor has told you that I don't tell any of our clients, and you can leave all that down below. If you are interested in editing, formatting, cover design, or other indie author services, make sure to come check us out at enchantedinkpublishing.com. We currently have a team of 7. We have 5 editors, 1 cover designer, and 1 formatter. We are working very, very hard on so many different projects. Let me give you a little peek at some of the books that we have recently worked on and that we received in our P.O. box. Now, this is in no means all of the books that we have. I have a shelf full of client books, but these are some of the ones that we recently received in our P.O. box, and I wanted to show you because they're just gorgeous. So we have Goddess of Limbo by Leah Falls. I copy edited this, and then Greg did the formatting, and Thea, our incredibly talented artist and cover designer, did some illustrations in here. This thing is a beast. It is almost 700 pages long. So this is one that we worked on this year. Here is one that we did a manuscript critique for and formatting, The Crimson Gods by Chris Christian. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous book. Like, there are some illustrations in here that will just blow your mind when you see them. Let's see if I can find one for you really quick because they're just so beautiful. Look at this. Look at that. Is that not like one of the most beautiful things you've ever seen? So we did formatting on this project. Just so beautiful. Let's see, what do we have here? We've got Academy for the Gifted by Hudson Warm. Now, we worked on Hudson's first book as well. That one was Not the Heir. We had the pleasure of proofreading and formatting this one. This is such a fun story. It really gave me it gave me some Gossip Girl vibes, which I love. I was madly in love with Gossip Girl. We did some really cool formatting for this project, so we received this one. And then another one we received is Promised Prophecy by Jamie Lee, and we did both a manuscript critique and copy editing for this client. It is such a fun book, and it's just gorgeous. I honestly, I love receiving books in the P.O. box, especially hardcovers. I've always been a fan of hardcovers. And something that's kind of interesting is that all these books that we recently received, they all have matte book covers. So please tell me, everyone, is there a push for matte covers that's going on right now? Because all of these are matte. And I've done both matte and glossy covers for my books. But anyway, I just wanted to show you guys some of these. So we have had the pleasure and the honor of working on so many absolutely amazing projects this year. We have a full roster of clients for next year. So if you are interested in working with us, please make sure to reach out sooner instead of later, because especially for editing and cover design right now, we're booking out quite far. So if you know you want to work with us in 2020, it's best to shoot us an email today. Go to enchantedinkpublishing.com and you can fill out the little contact form. And then we're trying to get back to those within 1 to 2 business days. And from there, we can work on getting you scheduled on the calendar. So I want to do a little shout out to all of our awesome, fantastic, talented authors. Thank you to everybody, all of you authors who have sent us copies. We absolutely love filling our bookshelf with your beautiful books. Thank you for watching this video. I really hope it helped you, and make sure you give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe down below, hit the bell notification so that you're notified when new videos go out. And if you want to help decide which video is coming out next, make sure that you are voting in my polls. I post those every Monday now, and then I film 1 to 2 days after that, either on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. So try to jump on that poll quickly so that your voice can be heard when it comes to what video I'm filming next. Okay, everybody, this has been a super long video. I'm gonna drink my tea and wrap it up, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!